You know that feeling when you've believed something your whole life and then one day you find out it's totally wrong? Well, today we're going to dig into why that happens. It's all thanks to this fascinating glitch in our mental software called the Illusory Truth Effect. And believe me, it reveals just how easily our brains can be tricked into believing a lie. So let's just jump right in with a question that sounds, well, kind of absurd. Could I convince you that a Scottish kilt is actually called a sari? Your first thought is probably no way, not a chance. But you might want to hold that thought. Because, under just the right circumstances, a very strange quirk in how we think can make a part of your brain start to nod along and say yes, even when another part is screaming that's wrong. So, how on earth is that possible? Let's get into it. To really get this paradox, we have to look at the simple but incredibly powerful engine that makes it all work, and that is the raw power of repetition. That's really the core of it all. It all comes down to this one simple, powerful principle. Repetition makes things feel true. It doesn't matter if it's logical. It doesn't matter if it's factual. Just by hearing something, seeing it, or reading it over and over and over again, our brains start to mistake that familiarity for truth. So why? Why does repetition have this almost magical effect on us? Well, this feeling of truth has a name, and it gets right to the heart of the matter: the fluency fallacy. The official term for this whole thing is the illusory truth effect, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's our tendency to start believing false information is actually correct just because we've been exposed to it again and again. It's basically a mental shortcut where our brain goes, "Hey, I've heard that before," and then decides, so it must be a fact. Okay, so how does this actually work inside our heads? It's a concept called processing fluency. Think of it like this. Imagine you're forging a new path through a dense forest. The first time, it's tough, right? It's slow, you're working hard. But what happens if you walk that same path every single day? It gets worn in, it becomes clear, easy. You can walk it without even thinking. Well, information works the exact same way in our brain. The more we hear a statement, the easier that mental path becomes. Our brain loves things that are easy. And this is where it makes a critical mistake. It misinterprets that ease, that fluency, as a signal for truth. It thinks, wow, that was so easy to process. It must be true.
And the researchers who studied this for years, they pretty much nailed the description. They found that because repetition makes statements so much easier for our brains to chew on, it leads us to this sometimes very false conclusion that they must be more truthful.
Now, this isn't just some abstract theory. This whole effect was first demonstrated scientifically in a really clever experiment way back in 1977. Let's take a look at how they figured this out. So, back in '77, a few researchers designed this simple but honestly brilliant study. They gave a group of students a list of 60 statements that sounded plausible, trivia type things, some true, some false. They had them do this 3 different times, each session 2 weeks apart. But here was the secret ingredient. 20 of those statements were the exact same in every single session. And here's the really smart part. They didn't just ask for a true or false. They had the students rate their confidence in how true each statement was on a scale from 1 to 7. This let the researchers see not just if they believed it, but how strongly that belief grew over time. And the results were, wow, just striking. For the statements the students only saw once, their confidence levels basically stayed the same. But for the ones that got repeated, look at this. Their average rating just kept climbing. It went from a shaky 4.2 up to 4.6, and then hit 4.7 in the last session. You can literally see their belief getting stronger right on the chart. Repetition was, in real time, making things feel more true. The takeaway was impossible to ignore. Even for stuff that people probably didn't know off the top of their heads, just repeating it was enough to make it seem more true. This was the first real, solid proof of the illusory truth effect in action. Okay, so it works for random trivia? Fine. But what happens when you pit repetition against something you actually know is wrong? This, right here, is where things get really, really weird. Hey, remember our question from the beginning? Well, this exact statement was used in a huge study in 2015. It is blatantly false. Most of us know the correct answer is a kilt. But the researchers, they wanted to know, could repetition even start to chip away at a known fact? And what they discovered was just a total paradox. On the one hand, the people in the study knew the right answer. If you asked them, they could tell you it's a kilt. But at the same time, after being exposed to that false, sorry statement over and over again, they started to rate it as being true. It's like two completely contradictory ideas were living in their heads at the same time. What this study proved was something pretty profound and a little bit scary. That feeling of familiarity is so potent, it can actually start to overpower your rational stored knowledge. That little gut feeling of, I've heard this before, can literally silence your own internal fact checker. So, this effect is clearly powerful in a lab. But what about out here, in the real world? Well, it turns out this isn't just some psychological party trick. It's one of the most fundamental tools of influence that surrounds us every single day. The illusory truth effect is basically a superweapon for anyone trying to persuade you. Think about advertising slogans you've heard 1,000 times until they just feel true. Think about news soundbites or political talking points repeated on a loop across every channel until they're just accepted as fact, whether they're accurate or not. It's a cornerstone of how propaganda works. And here is the craziest part. Studies have actually shown that even when you warn people about this effect, when you tell them, hey, just because something is repeated doesn't make it true, it still works. Your conscious, rational brain can know all about the trick, but your subconscious brain can still fall for it. So that leaves us with a really important question to think about. As you go about your day in a world that is just drowning in information, it's worth asking yourself, what truths that you believe in are based not on fact, but just on familiarity? Which of your beliefs are maybe just well-traveled lies?